Okay. Let's see. Let's finish this. Okay. We have the page. You have the page. Okay. Yeah. All right. So shalom, shalom, everybody. And okay, I'm just gonna try an experiment right now, which is probably gonna fail, but it's worth the start. Give it a shot. We'll play associations. If I say "Ve'asita hayashar v'hatov," then you'll say back to me. That okay, and then the next thing you'll say is, huh? Oh, there you go. So the experiment worked well. Lifnim b'short adin, like we're programmed, right? I say "V'asita hayashar v'hatov." You should do good, be straight and good, and people will say, well, yeah, lifnim b'short adin. You have to go above the letter of the law. Or the opposite, if I say lifnim b'short adin, most people will respond, v'asita yashar v'hatov. It's like a pasuk that's very much has been set into our brains over here. So that was the experiment, and it worked. And that's where we're going to head towards. I did it before I started, because if it didn't work, then I could sort of say, oh, it didn't work, let's start the shir. Being that it did work, I could say, oh, that's just going to lead us into the topic. We're entering, and this is the Hakdama on the page. We're entering now into Sefer Bereshis, and one of the nicknames for Sefer Bereshis, number one on your page, or Hakdama, the Hakdama on the page, is from the Netziv and his Emek Davar. Zeh Sefer HaNikra Sefer Bereshis, Nikra B'fi HaNeviim Sefer HaYashar. It's the nickname for Sefer Bereshis, right? Sefer HaYashar, it's the book of being straight. And the Netziv continues. I truncated it. You can take a look at it in your house. It's fun. Umefarish Rabbi Yochanan zeh Sefer Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov shenikru Yesharim. We know that the nickname for the Avot are the Yesharim. They're straight. Shenemar Tamut Nafshi Mavet Yesharim. That Bilam is actually saying that he should die. He wishes to die the death of the straight ones, of the upright ones, referring to the Avot. So the Netziv over here has a number of questions on it. It says, Yesh Levin Tam, Lama Kara Bilam et Avotenu b'Shem Yesharim b'Yichud. Why specifically is our forefathers called straight up, Yesharim, the Velot Tzadikim or Chasidim, Ukadome, just call them righteous. V'gam Lama Mechuna Zeh Sefer b'Yichud b'Kinu Yesharim. Why is Sefer Bereshis known as Sefer Yesharim? Ubilam also davens that he should be able to get that kind of death. So the answer is, the third paragraph, Zeh Yasheva Ha'avos Shem Levad Shayut Tzadikim v'Chasidim v'Ohavei Hashem. All of the Avot, and again I apologize if I over-explain or if I under-explain, please just correct me, everyone's from such different backgrounds. Zeh Yasheva Ha'avot Shem Levad Shayut Tzadikim v'Chasidim v'Ohavei Hashem. Even though the Avot, they're known for being tzaddikim and Ohavei Hashem and lovers of God, but often Yoter Efshar, they maxed out in that. Odhein Yesharim, they were also really straight up. What do you mean by straight up? Hainu she'itnaguim umot ha'olam afilu ovdei elilim mechuarim. Even with the worst of the Avodah Zarah, the idol worshippers, they conducted themselves, they enacted with them. Mikom makom hayu imam bi'ahava. They related to these guys who are running around and they're in Canaan. It didn't make a difference. They still had love for them, and they were always, what's the lashon? That chashu l'tovatam. The directing factor in being a yashar was what's in the best interest of the person in front of me. Even the Avodah Zarah niggas. Yes.
How is it clear from the quote Tamud Nafshi Mot Yesharim that refers to Abraham and Yaakov?
Bilam that's what Chazal talking about.
It's not clear from the text itself.
Yeah, I looked in the. It might not be. It might be Drashot or Chazal. I have to. I haven't looked at Bilam's statement. Yeah, but that's what the reference is that Chazal tell us. So he's saying, why is Bilam so caught up into that? Okay, so that's our definition, our working definition. Is that you're just concerned, it doesn't make a difference who's standing in front of you, but you're just concerned about what's in their best interest. And that seems to be the definition of what called Yashar is. So then we get to the pasuk in Sefer Devarim of Asita Yashar V'Atov, so that you should just be straight and be good. So here Rashi's going to define it a little bit more, that it's just not so like ambiguous, because they're just in their best interest. It's going to translate into more specifically, says Rashi, Zupshara, that's being compromising, Lifnim Mishor Sedin, and above the letter of the law. So I want to do just for a few minutes over here is to look at a little bit of some of the categories or the parameters of this concept. What do you mean you should go above the letter of the law? Is that true in every single situation? What situations would it be specifically that which demanded of us to be above the letter of the law, or suggested to us? Is it possible that sometimes it's demanded of us to be above the letter of the law, which is kind of like a contradiction, minei obey? In other words, it can't be that something is above the letter of the law. That means I'm not required by law, but is there a concept of demanding somebody to do above the letter of the law? So this is a different thing. How are we going to categorize this idea of being yashar, v'tov, and that's what we're going to take a look at now. Yeah.
Shara and Lifnim Mishor Sedim, contradictory statements in themselves?
Not necessarily, because a lot of times compromising is not. I had a case, okay, I was going to hold off my story to the middle, right? You always have to throw a story in the middle when people get a little tired. So I'm going to go with it now.
I'm tired already. So.
Okay, we're all tired. It's already, you guys are ready after a shiur, so it's already late. Okay, I'm just waking up. I have my second cup of coffee. But I had a situation, tell me if this resonates, might be badly by people, but I bought on paper. Anybody here come to the country and buy on paper? On how do you say it in kaniti and plans. I bought off plans, right? So I had my contractor. He was building along. Yeah. So I remember he was coming towards the end of the building of the house. Oh, actually, the house was put up already, and we had somebody who had moved in. We weren't ready to live there, so we were renting it out. Turns out we had water damage. Right? We're talking about the 1980s, where the thing was that the Arab workers used to take nails and make little pinpricks in the water. Still happens. And the water is how they construct over here. They have the concrete, and then they put sand, and then on the sand they put the blatot. Yeah. And the blatot come out even because they're pound away at the blatot to even them up. And because sand is underneath it, you could pound down, and that's the construction. But the wires, the wires and the plumbing is underneath the blatot in the sand. So if you stick just a pinprick inside the water plumbing pipes, then it's not going to be found right away. It takes a little bit of time until the sand gets logged, wet, and then it starts coming up the sides over here, and you can start seeing on the sides near the panels. It starts the paint starts peeling off. Okay, that happens. Yeah.
But it could also be natural corrosion of the pipe. Because I went through that with my apartment. It just naturally corroded from the water.
Yeah, except if you just bought the house and it was freshly built. unless the material was really bad.
I bought mine secondhand. It was there.
Yeah, that could happen. But it was a known thing. They did that. So we had that.
They stuffed concrete in the pipes.
And to flush it down the toilet. Yeah. Okay, but so I guess this resonates by people. Anyway, I had I went. My contractor was a frum Jew, and I went with him to Rav Hyman, who used to be the Rav of Beit Vegan. Right? It was the Rav of Beit Vegan. By name Rav Hyman. The word on the street was that he was early on. He had been forgetting my English today. Okay, because I'm tired. Right? He had been drafted by the Yankees as a pitcher. Yeah, this Rabbi. Yeah, from Beit Vegan. They could have used him this last week. So, even at the age of 80. But they could have used him. So, Rav Hyman, I remember going to him. He said to me, he wanted to see the house. So, he asked me to drive him to see the house, what the damage done. So, I take him over there, and I'm walking. I thought it was funny because I'm walking with the Dayan of the case, and the other fellow's not there. I showed him what's going on. On the way back, he goes to me. He says, listen, I'm going to try to get you 50-50. And I said, Rabbi, What do you mean 50-50? Like a pshara, right? 50-50. I said, what do you mean 50-50? It's as clear as can be, right? The guy, it's damage, water damage. The contractor is responsible. Fix it. Like, he should pay for it and fix it up. So I remember till today, still in my ears there. He said, Jingerman, it's a falsche Welt. Do I need translation?
Yes.
Okay, he said, young man. Remember falsche fish? It's a falsche Welt. It's a false world. He says, if I pressure this guy for what you really deserve, he's going to walk away. You'll get nothing. So I'm going to push him to come up with a pshara. And here he's like an arbitrator, but he was really acting in my defense. I remember in the middle, the fellow contractor at one point said, well, I don't know if I could agree on anything. I have to talk to my investors. So the rabbi said to him, then why did you come to this meeting if you can't make decisions? He was really like my defense lawyer. And there was one point he was scolding him. I remember he was going like this to the guy. And all I could look at was taking a look. Wow, that's really long fingers. He could throw a really good curveball. I guess it's true. At the end.
With the Yankees, because the Yankees didn't take on Jews until about the 50s and 60s. There were no Jews in the farm system way before that. So like New York.
Except for good old Sandy. But
Who?
it's a difference. Okay. Anyway, that's the story. So the storyline is we walked out of the building and this contractor he says to me, okay, I'm going to give you your 50%, but the truth is, he said, I don't have to. Why not? He said, because I touched the sudar, the handkerchief of the rabbi, and I never lifted it up. So I was in Makabel Kinyan. So first of all, he's an Amoritz. Why? Because a kinyan of a sudar is not that you're not doing a kinyan on it. You don't have to lift it up 3 tefachim to make a kinyan. The touching of the sudar is already just a haba'ah that you're accepting the responsibility. It's like some people say when they take the Sefer Torah through the shul, it don't have to necessarily kiss it, just the mere fact that you touch the Sefer Torah is a contract. And the touching of it is a symbol that you're accepting that contract. Same thing, they're holding the napkin of the fact that you touch it. That's already sufficient. Okay, that's the story. All right, so the story for today is over. You're going to have to concentrate straight up all the way to the end. But that's a case of pshara that I was not very happy about. So I didn't make an issue of it. Is that lifting me short Sadin in this case, or it's just because I'm bludgeoned in? I don't know.
Nobody's happy with the pshara. Both sides are unhappy.
Right, that's right. But sometimes you have to do it. Okay, so sometimes if you do it because you just say, look, I'd rather walk away in a peaceful settlement, that's going to be a sita yeshava tov. Because you have to understand, if you're not dealing with scoundrels, but you understand that I have a point of view, you have a point of view, usually there's some kind of emes in both sides. So you walk away with a pshara. So here we see a sita yeshava tov, which is, everyone quotes this. That's why I did the experiment. I say a sita yeshava tov. Everyone goes, yeah, lifnim yishur sitin, that's where we learn it from. Okay, it's in the Rashi over here. But you're going to see that it's not necessarily the only source. And we want to try to figure out, so where is it? Give me something that's a little bit more defined. Where do I apply this concept of a sita vayeshav, tov? So in order to do so, we're going to take 3 cases. Number 2 and 3 is going to be one case, then 4 and 5 is the second. Another is second and third case. We're going to look at 3 cases where there is usage of lifnim mishur sadin. See if a sita vayashar tov comes into play over there. And by understanding these 3 different cases and comparing them to each other, maybe we'll come up with some categories of applying the concept of working lifnim mishur sadin. That's what we have set up for the next few minutes. So let's start over here. We're going to start number 2 on the page. Okay? One of the most famous Mishnayos. I'm taking all of us in this room back many decades because this is one of those Mishnayos that people start to learn. It's like the first Masechet that you often learn in elementary school. Here the Gemara is talking about cases of Hashavat Aveda. That if you find something that's lost on the street, somebody obviously lost it, you find it, you pick it up. When can you keep it? And when do you have to try to find the person who it belongs to? Says the Mishnah. Elo Mitziot Shalo. Anybody remember this one? Elo Mitziot Shalo. These are fines, things you find that you get to keep. Elo Chayiv Lahachris. And these are things that you have to proclaim and try to find the owners. Elo Mitziot Shalo. Give me examples of those things that you find that has been lost by somebody and you find that you get to keep. So Matzah Perot Mefuzarin. If you have fruits that spread out on the street, ma'ot mefuzarot, you got some change that's sort of like cast. It's not lined up in a way that somebody obviously put it down, but just fell out from the pocket, spread out. So scattered, thank you. In all these cases, a number of cases in that Mishnah, and Rashi points out in the next line, Ho'il, since Ein Lahem Siman Nikar, there's no siman, there's no symbol, there's no identification on an identification symbol on these items. Nikar Ayorish Miyayesh, the owner eventually will recognize that he's lost it and he's not going to be able to get it back, and therefore he has Yeyush, he gives up his ownership. Fahavile Hefker, and becomes ownerless. Zotam Kulam, and that's all the reasons for the different cases that are presented in this Mishnah. So, to illustrate this point, we're going to skip to number 3 over here. The Gemara, a few pages later, in Baba Metzia, is going to discuss these cases. Now, the Gemara is written in Baba Metzia in the order that I brought it to you on the page. But we're going to do, just to make things simpler, we're going to start with number 3, B. You see where there's like 2 asterisks, and then we have B. That's where we're starting. That's the simpler case. And it lays out the law. Rava havi shakel va'azel basrei de Rav Nachman b'shuka de Galdoi. Rava was walking behind Rav Nachman, I guess they were learning, behind Rav Nachman in the shuk, in the tanner's shuk. Va'amri le b'shuka de Rabbanan, some kind of rabbinical shuk. Amar le matzakan arnaki mahu. If I find a wallet here on the floor of this shuk, of this public place, what would be the din? So Rav Nachman answers back, Amar le harei elu shelo. You could keep it, right? You find a wallet, obviously you could keep it. Because the person who lost the wallet, he knows it fell in a public place. He gives up on ever seeing it again, and that's called hefker. That point he says, I lost it, it's no longer going to be mine. All right, now. So assuming in this case no siman, but the next question then becomes the natan bo siman. But let's say the fellow, the guy who owns the wallet has a siman on it.
His name inside.
His name's inside it. Mahu, what's the din? Amar le. So again, Rav Nachman says back, harei elu shelo, finders keepers. Ay v'halo mevet zoveach, but he's standing there and screaming, look, it's got my name in it. Nasek et zoveach al beiso shenofa v'asfinoto shetava bayam. It's as if the house fell down and his ship sank at sea. What's the svara? The simple svara? So it's going to hurt me to give you the example because I have to mention the Yankees again. And if you're not up on I'm from New York, and I've been out of the country, New York, for 40 years, but still, it's still is inside. If you tell me they're in this World Series, it does something for me. I have a proof from Yisrael, but for some other time, why that happens. I still am interested. But anyway, they lost. So really badly. It's really embarrassing. But let's say I dropped my wallet in Yankee Stadium. It's got my name in it. Anybody here, you drop your wallet in Yankee Stadium, and it's got your name in it. You ever going to see it again? No way. No way you're going to see it again.
What, the telephone number? Or on the subway?
Yeah. Not going to see it again. Yankee Stadium?
40.
I was saying this, I was teaching in Silver Spring through Torah Mitzion on Shlichut. I said this, you drop it in, Center. They have a stadium down there in Washington, D.C., Capital One Stadium. I was saying it to the kids in my class, had no idea what I was talking about. I said, of course somebody's going to return it to you. I said, no, but you're in a stadium, 20,000 people. No, of course somebody's going to return it to you. I said, oh, you guys grew up in a civilized area. I grew up in New York, in the Bronx, right? You drop your wallet with your name in it, you're not going to see it again. Okay? So that's the case over here. So I was miyash, I'm never going to see it. And how does that work exactly? That's for another ship. But once you in your mind say, I'm never going to see it back, it seems like it gets taken out of your ownership. Now belongs to the world at large. Whoever finds it gets to keep it.
In Israel, it will get returned to you.
In Israel, it will
People
get
would look up the
returned.
name that's in it and call it.
It happened to me when I was in yeshiva. I lost my wallet in the cabbie with my first year. And my Rabbi said, don't worry. A few days later, actually, the guy, the taxi driver tracked it down. He figured an American who got off in the area of Shalavim. He said he tracked it down. It was like in this country, taxi drivers are very smart guys, right? They say they have a lot of chachma, which is true. So he figured out where it would be, came to Shalavim, and dropped off the wallet. I felt so taken by it growing up in New York. I wanted to find the guy to give him a present. And my Rabbi said, no, you don't have to give him a special present. That's like what we do. That's just common practice. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, but what you're saying about not, you've lost it, that's a practice. That's not the law, is it?
That's the law. That is the law. The law is, that's what he says to him. This is the law. Because you're the guy who owns the wallet owner is miyayish from ever seeing it again.
But why would he might be in Yankee Stadium, but he may not be.
So in the case of Yankee Stadium, that's the case. Okay? It's
But
miyayish.
in general, it depends on the circumstances.
Yes, it does. That is true. That is true. Okay? There's a story about somebody there's an umbrella sitting on one of the windowsills in the mirror yeshiva for the last 40 years. Because it's sitting there. Nobody wants to pick it up because then they become responsible trying to find who the guy is. So it just sits there. Okay? Because the guy, if he ever realizes that he left it there, will not be miyayish. Because, why would somebody do that? Okay, there we go. So that's the first case. I'm going to move this along because I don't want to run into time problems. And here's the next case. There's really fun cases. So the next case goes like this. Rabbi Yehuda Havishakal Va'az. So I'm number 3. Now we're doing Aleph. Rabbi Yehuda Havishakal Va'azal Brasei de Mar Shmuel Beshuka de Bei Daisa. So Rabbi Yehuda is walking. Rabbi Yehuda is walking through the and talking and learning with his Rebbe Shmuel in the shuk of the grainers, Bei Daisa. Amalai, and he says, Matzakan Arniki, if I find a wallet over here, Ma, what's the din? So Shmuel says, Amar le hare elu shalo. You could keep it because the guy who lost the wallet, it's in a public place. He assumes he's never going to see it again. You get to keep it. Ba Yisrael v'natan ba siman. But let's say that Yisrael finally comes by and it's a little bit later, but he comes and he says, I have a siman on that wallet. Mahu, what's the din? So then Shmuel says, Amar le chayev lahachzir. You got to give back the wallet. What do you mean you got to give back the wallet? We just said if it's become hefker, if the man who owned the wallet gave up ownership, and therefore I could keep it, just because he comes by afterwards and he says, hey, it has a siman in it, shouldn't change anything ever. You've already lost your ownership to this wallet.
So how does he know that he gave up already the other one?
So that's a question in the Gemara, another sugya Yehush Shalom Midasa, and we're assuming that it was a known Yehush. Okay? Guy in Yankee Stadium drops his wallet. It takes him 10 minutes to get to the train station, the subway, in order and to pay for the getting on the subway. So it's after 10 minutes. Okay?
So why do you consider it miyayish if the person who owned it put a siman in it? Because the only reason you need a siman is if you lose it. You don't need identification for yourself. You need a siman, and if you lose it, then someone can find you. So wouldn't that be a proof that he's not miyayish?
It all goes back, you're right, and it goes back to where it's happening. So I'm purposely putting it into Yankee Stadium. Because in Yankee Stadium, if you lose your wallet, even with your name in it, you will not see it again.
Where
Where did you grow up?
Where the Mets played
Did you
today?
grow up? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Brooklyn. And I wasn't a Yankees fan.
Yeah, but same thing in Brooklyn. You don't think that's true?
If you lose it on
No,
the
but
subway, you
then
think
why
someone's going to
would
return
I
it?
put a siman in it?
Because I'm hoping that I dropped it in my shul and somebody will give it back to me. All right, it's a given. All right, I'm given. Think of a case in your mind that you're definitely not gonna people on the street are not gonna give it back. That's the case, Togan. Yeah. Okay. So he says. So the Talmud says back, Tarti, you're giving me two conflicting psakim over here. You said I could keep it because the assumption was that the owner gave up ownership, and then now you're saying no, but if he comes back later, I have to give it back. But he already gave up ownership. I don't have to give it back. So he says, no, Amalei lifnim mishor sadin. It's a nice thing to do. It's the proper thing to do. You should give it back to him anyway. So that's lifnim mishor sadin. That's not the din. The din is I keep the wallet in my pocket. But lifnim mishor sadin, above the letter of the law, I'm going to give it to him. And they give a case, Gehada Abahu the Shmuel, that the father of Shmuel, Ashkar Chanich Tamre Bamidbar, he found a whole bunch of donkeys in the desert, Vahadrinu Lemarayo, and he gave it back to the owner, Lebasar Tracer Yarche Shasa, after 12 months. Lifnim Mishor Sadin. He gave it back at Lifnim Mishor Sadin. Tosfos understands this case also as being similar to the case, these kind of cases. 12 months go by, you could assume that the fellow who owns the donkeys, he read his Miyayish, a fluky thing happened, he found out where his donkeys are. Okay, that's the case according to Tosfos. So up to this point, this is standard cases of Lifnim Mishor Sadin. I find a wallet, I should be able to keep it, but it's a nice thing to do is to give it back. Okay, what's our source in this Gemara? What's the source in the Gemara? We have no source. Gemara's not giving us any source at this point. So just put that on the board. No source for this kind of an action. We don't bring a pasuk. We don't have any proof. So it's just saying it's a given. And we're going to get back to that point in a second. Yeah.
I want to put one more complication here. You lost your wallet in Yankee Stadium, but you've got one of these air tags in it, which enables the police or you to trace it.
Yeah, so maybe it's
Does
different.
it change things?
It definitely might change things. All these cases is fun. These are fun Gemaras, elements. That's why they start with it in 7th grade, because it's like, you could throw spin cases. My sister and brother-in-law, they went for their honeymoon. Back in those days, you got married in New York. Where did you go with your honeymoon?
Niagara Falls.
Yeah, or?
Grossinga.
Right. The Finger Lakes, St. George, Lake George. Okay, they're on the way up the thruway. All some weekend, and they had put their suitcases with all the. In those days, there was also checks. You had checks. They had put their suitcases with checks on the top of their car, and all of a sudden, we get a phone call that from somebody in upstate New York, we found suitcases. And it has your number in it. Somehow they tracked us down, and then eventually they didn't have cell phones. My sister and brother-in-law thought they lost their whole treasure. It's like losing a treasure chest, right? It's all your cost and the money. And they called home. We said, "Don't worry, we have it." They went and picked it up. That's a very nice thing. It was a different world, maybe, or maybe even today in upstate New York that would happen. But like the circumstances definitely do change the case. We're talking about a case we tried to set it up. We're not learning, I want to move from this, we're not learning Hilchos of Yeush. That's the beginning of this parak, and it gets really fun and complicated. Very simple case, in a setting in which you drop your wallet, okay, and you know you're not going to get it back. There's Hefker, Yeush, thus it's Hefker, and the person who finds it gets to keep it. If any way you happen to find the person, you should give it back, because that's the nice thing to do. Step 1. Let's go to step 2. Also fun case. Now we're going to number 4 on your page, Baba Mitzia Daf Lamed Amud Bet. Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi, Havi Ka'azal bar Orcha. He was going on the way, minding his own business. Paga ba hahu gavra, and he comes into some fellow, Havi Dori Pitcha de Ufi, and that he was carrying a bundle of firewood. Osvinu. And he rests the bundle with mitpach, and he was taking a break. He was resting. Omar lay. So Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi, who was an elderly man, comes by at that moment when the woodchuck says, "Dali lay, help me lift up this old schmutzy wood bundle onto my shoulders." Omar lay. So Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi is an elderly man. What's he going to do? He's going to start playing around with this kind of stuff, and it's pasnished a little bit. So what does he say? Kama shavyan. Well, how much is this bundle of wood worth? So the woodchuck says, Palga de zuzi, a half a zuz. So what does Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi do? Yovle palga de zuzi. He gives him the money. He buys the wood instead of having to deal with it. And for Afgharid, he mafkers it. And he says, anybody wants to come and get some wood to take home and so you could have supper. Okay, so this guy's a good yid with a smart brain, Yiddish cup. Hadar zachabahu. So the woodchuck says, wait, it's hefker. I could take it. I'll buy it back. So he grabs the wood, and now it's his again. And he turns, and he's also chutzpan. He's Jewish. Hadar yaivle. He turns to the guy, to Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi, and says, okay, it's mine again. Please help me put it up on my shoulders. So Hadar Yarv Le Pago the Zuz of Afgre. So again, Rabbi Shmuel gives him another half a zuz, and he's mafker the wood. Chazi Davi Kabai Lemehedar. He sees that the woodchuck is getting ready to take it again. The Mezakepahu, to own it. Omrale, so Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi says, L'kulei al mafkarinu, v'lachad lo afkarinu. No, I made it mafkir to the whole world, but to you I didn't make it mafkir, I didn't make it onerous. Okay? And it worked, because the Gemara, I'm going to skip it now, but in the parentheses, the Gemara asks, can you really do that? Right? If I relinquish rights to something, can I designate who am I relinquishing my rights to? Or do I say I'm now removing my ownership from the property and therefore it belongs to the entire world? So Machlokes Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, this you'll find in the parentheses. We're skipping the parentheses and we're going down to what happens next. Vaha Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi. Why did Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi, but wasn't he a Zokain? He's an elderly person, Ve'enu Lefik Fodo Hava. And he didn't even have to deal. He could have just said to the guy, listen, I'm not at that point, and keep walking on the road. Why does he even relate to this woodchuck? It was probably inappropriate even for the woodchuck to turn to an elderly man and say to him, help me start schlepping and lifting up of this pile of wood. So the reason he did so, Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi, Lifnim Mishur Sadin Huda Avid. He did above the letter of the law. He didn't have to, but he did above the letter of the law. Okay? As we say, so first of all, why is he doing above the letter of the law? Should you be helping a guy lift up his pile of wood? Yeah, Azov Tazovimo. You have to help him. But why is he not going to, or why do Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi not have to? He's an older person, so there's part of Kavod, the Hadar to Pnei Zokain. He had a dispensation. He didn't have to do it. So instead of accepting his dispensation, he went ahead and did what everybody else is chayav in. And that's the Lifnim Mishur Sadin of Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi. What's the proof that you should do this kind of activity of Lifnim Mishur Sadin? So there's a pasuk in Shmos where Yitro is telling Moshe Rabbeinu how to set up a system of judges, and then he concludes the pasuk in front of you, there's Arta Etem, and then these judges will be able to teach to them, the Jewish people, Et HaChukim, Et HaTorah, Chukim and Torah, V'odatalem, Et HaDerech, Yechuba. It's very cryptic, the way that they should proceed, Et HaMaseh Shayasun, and the things that they should do. What's Yitro talking about exactly? So if you flip the page, you'll see that the Gemara explains it. What is he saying? D'Amar Rav Yosef, let's break apart this pasuk. Vodatam lehem ze beit chayehem. That they should be taught, they should make sure that they should teach vocations to the Jewish people to make parnasa. Et haderech zu gemilas chasadim. Yechu ze bikur cholim. To go visit. Ba kvura. Menachem be involved in kvura. Et hamase ze hadin asher yasun, that you should do zulif nim mishur sadin. So we see a biblical proof over here from Sefer Shmos that a person is supposed to be doing lifnim mishur sadin. So now we have to do the experiment again, right? If I say to you lifnim mishur sadin, what are you supposed to say back to me? Pasuk in Shmos asher yasun. What happened to Vasita Yashar V'Hatov? Lifnim mishur sadin is learned from this pasuk over here, asher yasun. It's not learned from Asita Yashar V'Hatov. That's an oddity we have to try to figure out. And why did they bring a pasuk over here by Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi? And in our previous case in which the guy gives back the wallet and the shuk, they didn't bring a pasuk? What's the difference in the cases that should make this difference in how the Gemara learned this exactly? So that's an interesting thing. We'll have to relate to it. Yeah.
Maybe the plain expression of the din is related to Mishur. In other words, that it's not really Mishur din, but if you don't know what the din is, then you're supposed to do it. It should do. What is the word for Mishur? should do what's right.
I hear what you're saying, except for the
David,
fact
you should do what's right.
that even in the pasuk it says et hama'aseh ze'adin, asher yasun zulifnim mishor zedin. So it comes out that we know that this is what has to be done. In this case, Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi did not have to pick up that wood. That's the din. And yet, he does it. And that's lifnim mishor zedin. So we have a pasuk for it. Why do I need a pasuk for that? All right, we're going to get back to that discussion. Why do I need a pasuk even?
The Nishus Adin would mean that you're supposed to do a better tzedek than the din allows.
Then the din demands.
Requires.
Than the din demands. But the din is making a mistake, then you should do something else.
But the din's not making a mistake because that's the din.
Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yosef are related.
Now what you're saying, by the way, not exactly in this case, but in other cases, we will find proof for what you're saying. That din sometimes could be insufficient, taking in all of the parameters.
Because in a way, it's like saying the Nishus Adin, ignore the din.
Go beyond.
It's going beyond what the din is. The din is 100% right. And in this case, what happens? Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi has a dispensation. He does not have to pick it up. He doesn't have to pick up the wood. I could give you a svara that, why does he have a dispensation? Why is it that, according to the fact that he's elderly, he does not have to pick up the wood? Give me a svara. A reason. Give me an idea. Why?
He's not capable.
Huh?
He's not capable of left.
So if you're not capable, he's onus.
It's heavy, you can't pick it up.
Oh, what? Right? Hadarta Pnei Zoke. Don't we have an interest that on a social level that we have to be Mahadir Pnei Zoke? What happens if you have these guys, these older people, and they're like shutting along with the little kids? Isn't that a little bit of an affront to what we're trying to establish within our society? The idea of, yes, honoring older people. You want to take Rav Hirsch's approach, the concept of when you honor older people, you're honoring the whole system of Mesorah HaTorah, the recognition that it's being passed down. So those who came before us, we honor them because they're one more step closer to the event, to Matan Torah. There's a lot of reasons I could see why I want to make sure. We live in a society today, as some of us might have been exposed to it, but in a society today when there is Hadarta Pnei Zaken is not necessarily so readily understood. I've been teaching young kids and I see differences. I was just at a get-together and there was like 5 of my former Talmidot. They were sitting and I walked into a sukkah and there was no extra chair.
They didn't get it.
Not only didn't they offer me the chair, but they didn't even stand up. I grew up that you always stand up. I even stand up. Right? We stand up when people even our own age. You stand up. Where did that come from? And they're good kids. Is it possible that in the educational system today, this is a different topic, in the educational system of the day, we're so worried about Ava. But we used to be brought up in Ava and Yira mix. I brought up more Yira than Ava. But that the relationship with the teachers has gotten to be very much within the parameters of Ahava. Everybody's always so lovey-dovey and stuff. The kids lose out a little bit from the idea of the Yira relationship to the Rabbanim. I kind of keep track of the time, but this is things that, we have to have, we have to get a pot of cholent and just sit around and clear and throw out svaras. This is something to talk about.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
When I get on the bus, somebody offers me a seat.
Yes.
Do I take it when I don't need it in order to honor the principle of Hadar Pnei Zaken in front of the whole bus?
Yeah.
Maybe there's something to that. Maybe there's something to that. I have that with my kids sometimes. They're like, Abba, and sometimes I'll do it on purpose because I want to educate my kids. You got it. Huh? My kids will say, I noticed one of my sons in particular waits for me to walk in the door. Come to the house and he falls back and waits for me to go into the house first. And I'm like, it's not my nature, but I do it because it's a proper thing and he's doing it. Why shouldn't I fortify that which is a good thing?
And you have your right, though, to see the kavod. And the question of the kavod is that this didn't have to be a zaken. This could have been, your Rebbe or anybody.
It's so fascinating, right? That's a good point. I hear it. Is that the thing to do? We could have a vote on it, right? It's so fascinating, all these things. But okay, we're gonna one more comment and we're gonna move it along.
In other words, that's why in his example, someone wants to give it to him, and he doesn't need it, then the other person should be free because they did what they needed, but he doesn't need it. And so that's why the Hadanta doesn't apply here.
Unless I want that in society it should be established.
I appreciate it, but at least it tells you should ask. At the very least, you're doing it when you can ask. But if someone says, I don't need it, I don't want it, you can't force them on it.
I hear you. I'm just saying that there's another svara possibly that if you want to ensure that society recognizes these points, there's something to be said. If Rabbi Shmuel Bar Rabbi Yossi is walking on the street, he's a Rebbe and he's an older man and he gets asked to start picking up wood, I think there is something gained that he should be able to not have to deal with it.
Absolutely.
He's got a dispensation for a reason. And if he has a dispensation, how do I know that he has to go ahead and do it? Or that, how do I know he can allow himself to, in a certain sense, be mevazeh himself to start playing with the dirty wood? How do I know that be true? That I needed a pasuk for. That Asita Yashava Tov will apply, not that Asher Yasun teaches me Liftim Mishor Zadin that he doesn't have to go according to the dispensation. That's what we see in the second case over here. Take a look at the third case now. Number 6 on your page. All right? Number 5 on the page. This one also. There's a lot of questions. Rabbi Bar Chana, or Chanan, but Bar Chana, Tavrule Hanu Shikulai, he hired some porters to move a barrel of wine. So Tavrule Hanu Shikulai Chavita de Chamra. So he asked these porters to move for him a chavit, a barrel de chamra of wine, which is very expensive. Shoka and they tavra, they broke it. The yo-yos dropped the barrel of wine. Gone. What does he do? Because he just lost a lot of money. Shokol l'glimayu, he took their coats as a payment on the barrel of wine. Fair?
Maybe yes, or maybe no.
Why wouldn't it be fair? Why wouldn't it be fair? So these guys, the porters, Asa Amr Rav, they went to the rabbi, Rav, Amr Le, and then Rav says to Rabbi Bar Chana, Havluhu Glimayu, give them back their coats. Amr Le, so Rabbi Bar Chana says, Dina Hachi, is this the din? Listen carefully. Is this the din? The judge says, Amr Le, it is the din. Leman, as it says, Leman telech b'derech tovim, a pasuk in Mishlei that says you should always walk in the path of goodness. Rashi there says lifnim mishur sadin, and therefore yoav leglemayu. He gives them their coats. What's the obvious questions on this Gemara? So we don't have a Sita Yashar Tov. We don't have Asher Yasun, the previous pasuk, and he says, Dina hachi, is this the din? And the rabbi says, yes, it is. And what does he answer him? Lifnim mishor din. So what is it, din? Or is it lifnim mishor din? Is it possible that you have a situation where there's a lifnim mishor din that changes to become a din? In certain circumstances? Yeah. It's a cryptic Gemara over here. That's the questions that we have. The next thing that happens, Amrulei Aniyeh Anan. So then he says back to him, listen, Aniyeh Anan, the porters say to the judge, we are poor, V'tarchinan kula yoma, and we worked all day long, Now for Kafina, we're very hungry. For Leslan Midi, and we don't have anything, and we can't buy ourselves food. They leave out the fact that they just broke the guy's barrel of wine, which cost a bundle. So what should we do? Amar lei. So the judge says to Rabbi Bar Chana, Zil have agrayo, give them their payment for their work of the day. So Amar lei. So Rabbi Bar Chana says, Dina hachi, is that the din? This is crazy. Is that the din? Amar lei in. Yeah, it's the din. Why? Orchas tzadikim tishmor. The end of the pasuk continues that the paths of the righteous you should be watch. You should be careful with. So we have a question about Dina hachi. Yes, it is. Lifnim mishor sadin. We'll have to deal with that question. Additionally, what's our question over here? Here we do bring Lifnim mishor sadin. Excuse me, but it's based upon another pasuk from Mishlei of Laman Telef B'derech Tovin. So we have three cases found in Baba Matzia. Each one's are cases of Lifnim Mishor Sadin, and yet they have different sources for why you act. So that's a question. That's a good question. What's going on? So Tosas is going to deal with this.
You don't learn halacha from Mishlei. You don't learn halacha from
Right. We don't learn a new halacha from Mishlei, but what we do is, if we have an existing halacha to explain it better, that we do from the Nevi'im. It comes up in Shas a lot. As fortification. To give you a greater understanding of how strong that original halacha is, or how it should be applied, whereas you might not think so. Which is going to be a key to understanding this. So let's just do a look at the chart, number 7 on your page. Yes. Let's do Tosas, number 6. Tosas is very good. He lines up these three cases, and he gives different reasons, and we'll discuss it afterwards. We have a chart also. Tosas says the following, that the first case in which I lost my wallet, and in which somebody finds a wallet in the Yankee Stadium, he does not have to give it back, but anyway, he should do it. He should give it back. Why? Says Tosfos, Mi'asher Yasun Nafgalan, that it's learned from the pasuk of Asher Yasun, from Yitro, from the Chumash, the pasuk that's brought afterwards with Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yossi. He says that's the source. In other words, our source that we're working with for Lifnim Mishor Sadin is Dafka, the pasuk of Asher Yasun that we learned from Yitro, not Asitu Yeshavatov. That's pushed out.
But by definition, if you say it's Lifnim Mishor Sadin, it's optional. Because if it's not optional, it's there.
Right.
So the question is, what areas are voluntary and what is halacha?
Right. So what we're seeing here is three cases of voluntary, and we'll have to deal with the Gemara that says Dina Hachi. That we'll have to deal with afterwards.
But if it's Dina Hachi, then it's not Sure Sadin.
Correct. That is going to be a question we'll have to deal with at the end, if we do it today or some other time.
The question of what is the law?
I might have to cut this in half. Do we have any weeks coming up in the near future?
We'll find something.
Okay, we'll find something to finish it. Okay,
For that, you'll have to turn on airplane mode.
You know, a rabbi versus a commoner, you know, somebody who's more Hasidic, whatever, you know, is that or somebody, a rich person versus a poor person, you know.
You're miskaving to the Mordechai, which we'll have to get back to at the end.
Okay.
That changes things. Okay, let's keep going. So Tosas says the following: Lifnim Mishor Sadin, Me'asher Yasun Nafgalan, are the pasuk. The source is going to be Asher Yasun that we learned from Yitro. Tema, says Tosas, I wonder, the lo maisi kra hacha kidamaisi lekaman ba'uvda de Rebbe Yishmael. Why is it? You know what? Let's look at number 7 in the chart just to give us a chazar, and then we'll see Tosfos. In number 7 on your chart, you learn 3 different cases. There's the first case on Chav Dalid, where a person's matzah arnaki bashuk, you find a wallet in the marketplace, and you don't have to give it back because the owner was obviously mafker it. Yet, the rabbi says, Chayiv lahachzer lifnim mishur sadin. There, the Gemara ein makor. There's no pasuk brought as a source. Tosha says it's obviously from the pasuk of Asher Yasun, but b'chol the Gemara just left out the source. There's a Gemara in Daf Lamed Amud Bet, which we learned, where Rabbi Yishmael bar Rabbi Yossi, who's the elderly person, and he's asked to help a woodchuck start playing with the wood over there. So in that case, Yahiv Palga de Zuzah Va'avgare, instead of having to lift the wood, he pays for the wood and buys it, and yet he could have just kept walking on the way and just ignored the fellow. He has a dispensation because he's an older person, and yet over there he does get involved. Lifnim Mishor Sedin. Why? The source is given over there from the Torah, that Amaseh Asher Yasun. And thirdly, we have a pasuk. We have a case of Pei Gimel. In the case of Tovru Lehani Shukulai Chavita Dechamra, where the porter is going to break the barrel of wine, and yet Rabbi Bar Chana has to give them back their cloaks and also pay their salary. They did him damage. No, Lifnim Mishor Sedin, but in this case, we leave the pasuk from the Torah, and instead we use a pasuk from Mishlei of Laman Telech B'derech Tovim. Why all these unusual, why are the cases not, uniform within the Gemara? Says Tosfos number 6 on your page. Lifnim Mishur Sedin, Me'asher Yasun Nafgalan, the Kaman B'Pirkin. First Tosfos says Lifnim Mishur Sedin is learned from the pasuk in the Chumash of Asher Yasun, that Yitro was saying, get yourself judges and they'll teach the people Asher Yasun what they should do, which includes Lifnim Mishur Sedin. Tema, says Tosfos, the Lo Maisi Kra Hacha. Why don't they bring a pasuk when you're telling the guy to give back the wallet? Like when they brought a pasuk in the case of the old man that has to start bothering or allowed himself to bother with the wood. And later on, in our third case, Maisi Kra Harina, we bring another pasuk from Mishlei of Laman Telech B'derech Tovim. Shumi Divrei Kabbalah. So Mishlei. V'shavik Kra Dasher Yasun Shumi Divrei Torah. Why don't they just repeat the makor for Lifnim Mishur Sedin that comes out of the Torah? So Tosfos is going to give some chilukim. V'yesh lomar. The Lo Maisi Kra Dasher Yasun Ela B'makom Shacherim Chayavim V'hu Patur. That you're not going to bring a pasuk of the Torah to emphasize that this is Lifnim Mishur Sedin, and that the Torah demands of it or suggests it. That only comes up when everybody else in the world is chayav, and you have a dispensation. And that's the case of Rabbi Yishmael. He's an older person. It's not going to his kavod to get involved with the woodchuck. He doesn't accept his dispensation. He goes and helps like everybody else. In that case, we bring the pasuk of Asher Yasun. We get the gushpanka of giving the pasuk from the Torah.
What is gushpanka?
What? Gushpankin is to give it force. Yiddish, for giving it force. Okay? V'hacha, and in our case of the wallet, and Mishmaisin, and similar when the Hadron Basar Trasa Yarche Shasa Kuli, in the case when I'm giving back these donkeys after a full year, or I'm giving back a wallet that I found in the shuk, and finally figure out who it belongs to, Kuli Ala Paturin Lakach, the entire world is patur. Lakach Lo Maisi Kra. That's why we don't bring any pasuk. Why? Because of that din, Boy Leila Hadure, you should give it back, kivan she'eno mischaser mamona, because you're not losing out any money. Okay, what's the distinctions? Okay, we'll get the question. What's the distinction? Well, it's a case when the entire world is patur, everyone's patur, and you're patur also. You don't have to act. But hey, what's Tosfos' big point? Lo mitchaser mamona. I don't lose money. I found a wallet. Easy come, easy go. I found the wallet. It's not mine. I didn't work for it. I happened to find it on the floor. So what's your problem, man? What is it basically? What would we say in English? Nothing off your back. Nothing off your back. What's the big deal? Be a good guy. Be a yashar. The original definition. have in mind what's in the best interest of the other fellow, so give it back to him. What's the problem?
Well, why isn't the din that way?
That's the din.
That's the female shows it.
Oh, so why isn't the din that way? Because legally speaking, I could keep it.
Why is the legally speaking that way?
Because legalities have to be kept.
It shouldn't be written that way.
Because legalities have to be kept very clear and straight. Because when you're going to apply these legalities elsewhere, you have to have a very clear bead. It can't be fuzzy. You have to have a clear bead. Person loses, has yeyush, de facto there's hefker, and thus you're allowed to keep something. That has to be made clear. That's called a legal system. That's what Choshen Mishpat's based upon. Now, the Gemara is saying b'chol ofen lifnei mishur sedin should be applied over here, and it's so pashut. How pashut is it that this is what you're supposed to do? They don't even bring a pasuk. I hear what you're saying, but I kind of disagree with you.
I think there's one.
If you know in advance that you're really required to do a female shows the din.
I don't have to. But I don't have to. If I want to be a crumb bum, I could keep it. I do not.
For that, you'll have to turn.
Also in Yankee Stadium, most of the people are going.
No, it's me. It's me who's
They're
doing
not
it.
following. They're going to keep it.
Yeah, to your point. But I think one of the things that you're saying, if whatever the din is, but this gives us an opportunity to Kiddush Hashem.
Yes.
And I think that's what you're missing. You're going to say, yeah, this is the din, but this is the opportunity that we get to show that we're going and behaving more like Hashem would like us to.
And there's like certain halachic premises, and you have to follow it through. Does that mean that you should act like a crumb bum? No, that's anti-Judaism. And we were going to see at the very end, probably next time, that that's where the halacha does get in. Can you have a basement that says this is the din, but we don't like it? Oh, I'll give a little bit away. We'll do this the next time. I'll get back to Sir. I'll get back to your point in a moment. But over here, it is so simple that you should be acting like the Yeshua did, that we don't even have to bring you a pasuk. It's basic Judaism. Right? You Jewish? Give back the wallet. Nothing. Okay. What about the next case? It says Tosfos, right? That I have, in that case, what's going on, I personally have a dispensation. Right? If I have a dispensation, I don't have to lift up the wood. So this is the case on the chart I wrote it down. Achirim Chayovin. The whole world would have given it back. I personally don't have to. So in this case, this is the way I think about it. I could see a good reason why this man shouldn't go against the dispensation that was given to him by the Torah. The Torah says, Hadarta Pnei Zokim, should be involved. I think there's a reason to assume that the Torah gave you that dispensation. There's a very good reason for it. Maybe I should say, okay, maybe it's not in my best interest. Maybe this is something I don't get over here, but I should be doing it. There I need a pasuk of saying, Vasita Yashar Batov, to push me into action. So Tosfos says that's why we bring the pasuk of Asher Yasum. We bring the pasuk from the Torah to let me know that I don't accept the dispensation and I go to work. What's the last case? The last case is when the porters broke the barrel of wine. Okay? And here, the judge says to the guy, you have to give him back their coats
and pay them.
And pay them. So he says, Dinach, is that the din? And then the guy says, yeah, but the Gemara says, Lifnim Mishor Sedin. And the pasuk that's brought over there is because, we read this in the Tosfos, last line of the Tosfos in 6. Aba b'sof ha'umnim, ba'anhu shakuloi shishavu lo achavit, when those porters broke the barrel of wine, v'asalo hefsed gadol, and gave him a really great financial loss, Yishum Lifnim Mishor Sedin eino lo lahafsid. In the case when you have a great financial loss. So give me a good svara. In other words, huh? So I need a pasuk. But I would say, is this really what Lifnim Mishor Sedin demands of me? So maybe I need Shlomo HaMelech to say, you know what? There are added elements of Lifnim Mishor Sedin that you could I could see people say, look, I'm a good guy, but so much money they cost me, hey, in this case, I don't want to do it. does he have to do it? Let's say he's wrestling with himself. He's a good guy. He's wrestling with himself. Financial loss, hefsed gadol is the category which Tosfos is using. There's a good svara to say that maybe you don't have to do it. And on this is where the Gemara will bring in, this is where the Gemara brings in additional from Mishlei. That's coming to define for you, I'll be finished in a second. It comes to define for you that the Lifnim Mishur Sidin, the tentacles of the Lifnim Mishur Sidin goes much further than you would think. And yes, you should do it. I guess if you could afford it. Now it's going to get into what you sir was saying and what you sir said that. But how does it become a dinahach? And this I discussed it next time. When is it flip? But it could be that this Lifnim Mishur Sidin, if you have the means, it could be that a based in, where they get the right to do so, could look at you and say, you have to do it. Your Lifnim Mishur Sidin becomes a din. And if you start doing that, then it gets very fuzzy because that means a based in is not bound. It's doing, ultra, what's it called, ultra judicial, which becomes very tricky when you want to run a based in. But what we have to do is talk about this a little bit more. When does the din become Lifnim Mishur Sidin? Why would that be? And also, what are we still missing? Okay, experiment. Where do I learn Lifnim Mishur Sidin from? Vasita Yashar V'Hatov. What are we missing? No, I'm sorry. Where do we learn it from? Asher Yasun. We're still missing Vasita Yashar V'Hatov. It's the original source. I guess we'll have to take some care of some other one.